In a world full of turmoil, despair, and darkness, you need to carry the light. Season 3 of the Get Attitude podcast is where we will ignite your mind, your heart, and your attitude. And welcome to the GAP, the Get Attitude podcast. My name is Glenn Bill. I am the host of The Gap. And man, we are happy to have you here today. We want to thank you for joining us yet again. We're here knee-deep in Season 3, carrying the light, and we have a gentleman today with us who carries the light in a lot of different manners. Please always remember to, share this episode. Tell all your friends that need a little attitude adjustment to follow us on Spotify. If you like to watch it, we're on YouTube and Spotify as well. But please follow us, continue to build. We were just recognized as one of the top 2.5 podcasts in the world by Listen Notes, which we just got a notification on that. Jason, awesome job on that. Thank you, my man.
No problem.
And I know that we're also in line for our 3rd Communicator Award. So God willing, the Little Sisters of the Poor, our podcast with them, be awesome to see a couple 90-year-old nuns and us get a big old trophy for the Get Attitude podcast. But today, we have somebody very special. I saw a story about what he did on the Today Show, and then I started looking into this thing called Volition America. We have John Sapiente, the CEO of Volition America, who has worked his way through entrepreneurial depths of brand building, partnership acquisition, and everything in between. Prior to John's patriotic awakening moment, in the At the Folds of Honor Gala in 2013, John was the owner of 2 manufacturing companies, Elgin DeMold and the Trident Manufacturing Company. He is an entrepreneur and, as mentioned, the CEO of Volition America. Upon attending that gala, John forged a relationship with Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney, who introduced John to the idea of this thing called Volition America. Since then, John has procured partnerships with several top-tier brands like Puma, Cobra, Lizard Skin, Victus, Marucci, Revo, Luminox, and that's just to name a few. He's got a whole bunch of different relationships that he's forged. While spending his impartial explanation of patriotism and donating portions of Volition America profits to aid service people and their families through the Folds of Honor Foundation. This guy's an entrepreneur. He's a leader of what I think is one of the coolest not-for-profits going in America. There's so much to learn as we dig in. Those of you who are leaders, those of you who are entrepreneurs, those of you who may own manufacturing companies, those of you who are running 501c3s, guys, look it. Time to get some attitude with the one and only John Sapiente. John Sapiente, sorry. John, great to have you on the Get Attitude podcast.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. This is great.
I love it. I love it. So, that's a mouthful. You're a busy guy. You sound almost like my intro. If you did less, we could have nailed that in 50 words. But I think it's important people know who we're talking to and what you do. Let's just start off real quick. Tell us a little bit about Volition America. I'd like to know kind of what that is, what the mission is, and then tell us what it was like, the attitude that it took for a successful entrepreneur, a guy that owns, 2 different businesses, 2 manufacturing companies, and go, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and be a CEO. So tell us about the mission, and then tell us what's the attitude it took for you to say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and grab hold of this.
Yeah, the brand came about from Dan Rooney, the founder of Folds of Honor and Volition America. The idea behind Volition America is volition means the power of choice. So you can, the choices you make write the legacy of your life. So the idea was, Dan lived his whole life around attitude and choices, and he believes that you choose to be happy, sad, love, hate. And he really wanted to start a brand that empowered people to choose America and live a better life. So Volition clearly making choices and making better choices. And then while we were doing that, we had a cause behind it, which is Folds of Honor, which is the non-for-profit, which we give 13% of our revenue back to Folds of Honor to support the fallen soldiers that gave us the freedom to have power of choice.
Yes.
And that's kind of the idea of the brand. And so it was clearly Dan Rooney's idea. He's the brainchild behind this. I was the vehicle in which he approached me and asked if I would help start this, because he didn't have the money to do it, and two, he couldn't use what we call donor money from the charity to start a business.
Yeah.
So he gave me a mission, and I was all in. And so I said, sure, I'll go do that. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I said, sure.
Well, let's talk about Dan Rooney. I mean, that number one, when you just look at being, quite simply a leader. So many of us are faced with great prospects and great projects, but yet we try to take them ourselves instead of finding somebody like yourself to make this happen. Tell me a little bit more about Dan, what he does, and maybe what his attitude is, or even a little bit of his background.
Yeah, so Dan is a really incredible American. His first, he started off as a PGA golf pro. Wow. And decided that he loved being a fighter pilot. So he ended up with 3 tours of duty as a fighter pilot. And he came home and was here in the country, and he flew home one night and was on a plane. I think it was like midnight. Everyone was getting off, and they had a fallen soldier's casket come off the plane. And he saw what he calls the other side of war. He saw a 3-year-old son watching his dad flag drape coffin come off the plane. And Dan decided that, hey, I'm going to get that kid a scholarship.
Wow.
And that was 20 some odd years ago. And he started Folds of Honor over his garage. And now they've given $220 million away and 44,000 scholarships to the families of the severely injured or fallen soldiers. And now they're doing first responders too. And how do I explain Dan? He's probably the most inspirational human being you're ever going to meet in your life.
Wow.
He lives a life of, a mission that is make the world a better place. He gives back. He used me as a vessel. He's pulled together tons of different people to drive this mission. And he's an unbelievable patriot. I mean, he's just incredible.
And I'm guessing that's the gentleman I saw on the Today Show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was on there talking about, so we made a series of t-shirts, which is what you saw, and they were our anthem tees, and they were all around attitude and things you talked about. But basically I call them Rooneyisms. But freedom isn't free is one. Obviously, that's pretty standard. But he has another big one. Maybe as the bottom, if you go down a little bit, go before you're ready. He and I always joke we were too stupid to know, but just go. And the body achieves what the mind believes, or I believe I can, I will. And those are all slogans and things that we empower at Volition through your attitude to try to make better choices, recognize and give back, have the belief that you can accomplish things. So we made these anthem tees. And they sold like crazy. And so we've just restocked it. We actually have a Freedom Isn't Free one coming for Mother's Day. But yeah, they're super inspirational and they're basic and fun, but people are buying them up.
And so there are no more left, or like, what's the website we can go?
I had to reorder, but the website's volitionamerica.com.
Okay.
We have all sorts of different clothing on there as well.
Good. Volitionamerica.com, guys. I'm telling you, I know those of you who are listening, as most of the people do on our podcast, you want to go check these tees out. These would be awesome, and these would be great gifts. We're coming into Memorial Day, and I'm in Indianapolis, 500, huge honor and tribute to our veterans and fallen soldiers on that day. Have you ever been to the Indy 500?
I've been once. Very fun.
And that was enough?
Yeah, I go back.
Okay.
For sure.
Cool. So when we so that's great. He was a soldier, is that correct too?
He's still active. He's still actively, I think he explains himself as Viper and Top Gun now. So now he's an instructor.
Okay.
But yeah, he had 3 tours of duty.
Wow.
Yeah, he's an incredible human being.
That's awesome.
We're being on your show.
So, well, we appreciate you guys, and we appreciate exposing the message, because here's the point. After just hearing your opening, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to open the checkbook and get behind this thing. I mean, that's you think about the visual of a 3-year-old watching his dad come off of a plane. That doesn't hit you in your gut, I don't know what does. And so you're helping those families. Can you tell me maybe a story about how long have you been doing this, number one? And what was there one or two, just one is all we need, that man just hit you right between your eyes, like when you experienced the good you're doing for the first time? I'd love to hear that.
Well, so I guess I'll say this on air. I probably shouldn't, because people look down on me a little bit. But for the first 45 years of my life, I took the military for granted.
Yeah.
And I went, so 2013, I went to a Folds of Honor charity gala, and they were auctioning off a round of golf with a famous Masters champion, Craig Stadler.
Wow.
And I bought the round of golf with the Walrus, because I wanted to play golf with the Walrus, not because I was that into the charity.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know was I was playing golf on Memorial Day in the Patriot Cup, which is a Folds of Honor tournament.
Wow.
And I spent the entire weekend with the military and their families on Memorial Day.
Mm.
And I walked out of there like, holy cow, I can't believe I've overlooked this my whole life. And I really became an active Folds of Honor donor, using money, time, and networking. And that became my charity. And the thing for me that was different than other charities, which, I have other things I give to, but it made, everybody, your mom may get breast cancer, or someone may get sick in your family. That becomes your thing. What really resonated with me is we all live under this blanket of freedom, and they're not being taken care of. And so everybody should rally around this. So I became very passionate about it. And as more passionate I became, the better friends Dan and I became. And over the next 3 or 4 years, we were just friends, and I was a donor, and that was how I got involved.
Wow. That is so cool. And so, and that's a damn good story. But could you maybe, let's just dig one more deep. Could you give us an example of a family that maybe just really, that's a good enough answer, but like, is there just maybe one more story about, hey, there was this kid and here's what happened, and here's what we did? The first
tournament you play in, so the tournament I played with the Walrus is you play with the celebrity, a donor, which was me, and then a military person.
Okay.
So you have an active person in there that was injured or whatever that played with us.
Wow.
But then in your cart rides a recipient. So I met one of the recipient families, spent the day with a great kid, and they give scholarships, all levels from kindergarten all the way through college and grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to meet the family, and the wife had 5 kids.
Wow.
And the father was gunned down in battle. And in her darkest day, Folds of Honor came in and helped the family. But there is just, you can't go to a Folds of Honor event and not walk out of there crying. It's unbelievable when they get the recipients and the family and talk about the disaster left behind when they find out. And Folds has always been there and rallied around them. So for me, I don't have one story. I'm just telling you, it's just an incredible movement to meet the families and the kids and how much they benefit from getting taken care of. And that's the honor, the legacy is really what they're trying to do. Is take care of these people's families.
That is, and so this has been going on for 25 years, correct?
I would say, my guessing, I think it started in 07.
Very
so 16, 17 years.
Our producer, Jason, and Jason, I'm just curious if you've heard of this, Helping Hands for Freedom. Have you heard about Helping Hands for Freedom? Jason, give John a little commercial on what you did.
Yeah, well, we did so I was part of a documentary team. There was 2 of us, and we followed 2 gentlemen across the United States from Atlantic City, New Jersey to San Francisco, California, and it was all an effort to raise funds for a house of healing for military families, Gold Star military families, and veterans suffering from PTSD. So that was a 4-month journey, and was just amazing. But I forget what the rating system is called, but it's they rated really high, and I think they actually won an award for how well they spent their money, or like the percentage of what actually goes to the military families as opposed to what they keep for administrative kind of thing. So it was just an awesome experience, and just hearing I know exactly what you're saying. Hearing the stories of the Gold Star families, mothers, fathers, and just hearing those stories was just so incredibly life-changing.
Interesting.
Yeah, the Folds of Honor, same thing. It's a guide, Gold Star charity. I think they give 91 cents on the dollar to the recipient.
That's good. That's damn good.
Incredible.
So let me ask you this: being an entrepreneur and running this, you've been the CEO for how long?
Since 2016.
Okay, wow. That's a stint, 7 years. What's the attitude been for you? How is it different? And you have an attitude and goals and mission in running a business, and you have an attitude, goals, and mission in running this Folds of Honor. Is there a difference, and what is that?
Well, for me, the difference is, I have two stable businesses where you're dealing with normal business things on a daily basis. And then I decided to start this for Dan and with Dan. And you're a one-man band and you don't really know what you're getting into until you start going forward. And it's been an attitude really of just continue to forge ahead because you're doing good and you're bringing, you're giving back despite all the obstacles and things as a startup that I've never had to deal with.
Yeah.
So this business for me, it's been intellectually, it's been challenging because it's in a totally different segment of the world that I've never had to deal with. So the whole brand building and partnerships and all that not anything I've ever been exposed to. So it's been a big learning thing, and I've had to just keep my head down and forge ahead, even though sometimes it's like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Hard.
So let's talk a little bit about what were the biggest obstacles and how did you overcome them? Like let's just take branding. You're sitting here, you're going, okay, because there's a lot of people probably listening to this going, yeah, I got this great idea, but I don't know how to start. I don't know how to brand it. So what I guess I'm looking for is maybe a playbook or a little check sheet. Hey, if you were in my shoes, right, when I did this, here's like 5 or 6 things that I would probably encourage you to do.
Well, first and foremost, the idea is that you don't know anything is probably the best thing that you can do. Just go into every meeting. I always tell people in every meeting, I'm the dumbest guy in the room, so you're going to have to explain it to me. And so part of the success of the brand is I've really listened and learned from people who do this every day. Ultimately, I validate that I agree. Yeah. I use a quote in my business that just because they're a doctor, an accountant, or a lawyer doesn't mean they're right. And what I mean by that is it's great information, but you need to validate it. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is if you think starting a business, it's going to just be all downhill and great, you're sadly mistaken. It's super hard because you're dealt a ton of unforeseen obstacles and you got to be strong enough to work around them and find alternate ways to do it. But for me, what's really interesting about this brand was we started in one path and it was ultimately impossible to build it. And I had to totally pivot 180 degrees. So when Dan came to me, I think at the beginning of the show, I talked about he's a fighter pilot. Dan wanted to make t-shirt, jeans, a belt buckle, and a hat. So if you're visualizing that, he visualized Tom Cruise and Top Gun.
Right.
And that was my mission, to go make that and let's go sell it.
Wow.
I said, okay. And if you think about jeans, you've been to a jeans store, there's long jeans, skinny jeans, 30-30. I'm thinking from now I'm in my manufacturing hat is, how am I making this? How am I inventorying this? Mm-hmm. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right.
So then I met another gentleman and he said, who owned a big brand. He said, yeah, don't make jeans. It's really hard. And then he kind of started bragging to me about all the problems he had with design when he started. And I realized I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I don't know how to make clothes, so I'm going to find a partner. So that was my first, what we'll say is a pivot. And then the second pivot is we went into golf first, because Folds of Honor is really big in golf, very big with the PGA and big active with golf tournaments. So the other thing I realized is that, there's all sorts of golf stuff, clothes, hats, golf clubs. But the other thing I realized is 80% of the sales in golf come from pro shops. So, as I mentioned, I have a day job with 2 companies. Who's driving around with a bag of polos? So at the end of the day, I had no manufacturing, no design, no distribution, and no time. But we had a great idea. So we decided that what if we try to license it? And we went to Puma. We met a couple different companies. We went to Puma, met the CEO of Puma North America, and he fell in love with it. And we signed a collaboration with them and licensed golf to them. Wow. So since 2017, Puma has been our partner, and they made a exclusive clothing line for golf. And then we've added Cobra for equipment. But they're our golf partners. Wow. And they sell exclusively to the golf market. They've proved the whole beta that people love it. And what's really interesting, we had in 2018, this is super cool. We got a call. I don't know if you guys know this guy, but his name's Gary Woodland. Mm-mm. Gary is a PGA professional. He called us. He had just finished his Under Armour contract and asked if he could wear our stuff on tour while he was getting a contract.
Wow.
and ended up wearing it and being in the finals in the PGA finals with Tiger, and our sales went crazy. And then he came to us in 2019 after the 6 months and decided he wanted to sign with us. And we signed with him, and he won the U.S. Open wearing Volition America clothing. And ever since then, there's been no looking back.
Wow.
Super cool.
Something to be said about karma and doing the right thing. And, I was sitting there going, how do you get in to talk to the, CEO of Puma and Cobalt and all those?
Cobra, yeah.
Yeah, or Cobra.
Networking, using your resources. Sometimes I joke, too stupid to know you shouldn't be asking for that.
Right.
But it's just a mindset that you're going to get to them, and it's an attitude. And so a lot of people, I call it being falling under a common assumption or failing because of common assumption.
Mm-hmm.
They assume the answer is going to be no, so they just don't ask.
Right.
I'm just the opposite. Worse it happens, I say no, and you go on to the next thing. So we had a couple other guys involved. They got Dan in front of Bob, and those two hit it off, and it was great. And since then, all the other partners we had, I've been using LinkedIn, Rocket Reach, cold calls, networking, asking people to connect me to. And once we get the door open and they kind of hear our story,
yeah,
they fall in love with it because it opens up 75 million proud Americans that want to stand up and say, this is what I stand for.
I love it. And I mean, your product and your mission is tough to say no to, right? I mean, if you're an American and you love freedom and you have some sense of nationalism or patriotism, that's a real tough ask to say no to. When you mentioned, when you hear our story, I think we've heard your story, but I want to make sure because, my goal all the time with our podcast is that this is a piece that you can put on your phone, copy, paste, send a link to whoever and say, hey, if you want to know about us, listen to the Get Attitude podcast. They did a nice job. Is there anything else about the story that we should know or that we don't know that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think the thing that's important about the brand is, first off, we're trying to create something that you go in your closet that you're proud of, that you put on that says, this is what I stand for.
Mm.
And, and the other thing that from the beginning, I've been very aggressive about not being, because patriotism viewed as a right-leaning word, and it's not. It's just a love of country. And so I've been very, very strong on basically making this a non-political brand. You can be really far left and love your country, and you can be really far right and love your country. The idea is, and I tell people this all the time, is we're not red and we're not blue. We're red, white, and blue. So it's a unifier, bringing people together with better choices. That's what this brand is about. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is there's a white space for a tasteful brand that's, not, the cheesy flag shirt on 4th of July. We're trying to build a movement 365 days a year to celebrate country in a tasteful, cool way. So as you see our clothes, they're not loud, proud, big flag or big eagle. It's just a tasteful brand that's, this is what we stand for. And we want to give back to those that helped us.
Jason, if you can get their logo, let's throw it up there because, yeah, it is. It's somewhat understated, right? I mean, it's easy, and you're right. It's never been the focus of anything, but very.
But if you look in the middle of that logo, that's the folded flag for a fallen soldier.
Yeah.
And our idea is we're putting wings on and lifting it up and taking it places it couldn't go. It's also the Folds of Honor logo.
Yeah,
and so to make that triangle, there's 13 folds in a folded flag. And that is why we give 13% back to Folds of Honor.
Oh my gosh. How cool. Now that's the story.
That's the story. Pretty cool.
Hey, we got to it. There's no doubt about it.
We're honored to be able to do this. It's been fun and it's been great learning and it's fun to get back.
So you gave us some pretty awesome numbers. I think at the beginning, 220 million given away. Can you tell us how many people are in this movement, right? 220. What are the metrics? Do you have any metrics that you just want to throw out just so we know the impact?
Tell you, from the golf side of it, Puma has now got Volition in 2,000 pro shops.
Wow.
We're in Dick's. We're in PJ Superstore. We now have as you guys are seeing on our website, we now have our own e-commerce platform, which is new this year, where we're bringing all the brands together in one location. And the thing that's so beneficial for a brand is now you're bringing together these huge brands and they're getting a free audience from the other brands.
Right.
So we're a force multiplier for them, where Puma all of a sudden is getting the Marucci audience or vice versa, or the Luminox. So they're getting really unique storytelling. They get to give back, and they're getting free audiences. So it's a business benefit for them. It's a goodwill thing for everybody. It's the ability to give. So there's so many layers of this that have been super successful and fun. And it's a little humbling for me just to see it kind of turning into a real brand. I mean, I had no business doing this, and it's super cool.
Now, I think I saw that there's a newsletter and there's a magazine. Is that true? And like, how many subscribers are on that, and how many people are in?
We don't have a lot yet. We don't have a magazine. We have a newsletter that goes out once a month. We have about, on the Volition side, we have about 10,000.
Okay.
But the beauty of that is when we send it out, and then with our brand partners, it now reaches millions of people.
I see.
So I did this. It's funny because I did this backwards because I was busy with my time. Normally you build a brand, you get it going, and then you go do collaborations.
Right.
I did collaborations really because how do I get it to market with no time? And so we built up this audience through our brand partners. And now we have our own product line rolling out in probably July or August. We have our own clothing line, which will kind of be an activewear type thing. So we use a comment internally at Volition is we want to give you a uniform for life. And the idea of the uniform for life is you go in your closet and you put on something that means something to you. So we'll have our pillar, which is kind of going to be outerwear and activewear. Mm-hmm. And then anything that we don't offer, we'll do a collaboration. So if you want to go play golf, here you go. If you want to go play tennis, here's a partner. Here you want to go play baseball or fish. And so we'll partner with best-in-class brands and bring you best-in-class products. And what they basically do is I call it, they take the greatest hits and they volitionize them.
Yeah, there you go.
They take their, like Marucci's got their Cat X bat, which is best in class, and they'll dress it up and volitionize. It'll be super cool. And, same thing with Cobra drivers and the clothes, and it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, that's so cool. Hell, you fit on our innovators, and what was that? What was our last season? Influencers and innovators. That we could have slid you right into the Get Attitude podcast season 2. That's so cool. Let's talk about, I guess, John, the person, if it's okay. I'd love to know what your definition of attitude is, and who is your first attitude coach?
I don't even know. And the attitude coach, I don't know. My general attitude is no matter how hard things get, you got to stay positive and keep powering through it. Mm. And depending on where you want to ascend in life, there's going to be obstacles, and you just got to keep getting up and dusting yourself off, and it is what it is. So it's discipline, it's willingness to take negative feedback or body blows and be positive with it. So everything's a learning experience. It's not a negative. And my dad, I'm thinking of a mentor. I mean, he was obviously my mentor. But he basically every problem is an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I just listened to that and I did that. So that's probably my biggest thing with an attitude, because when you own a business, there's no day in manufacturing there's not a problem. It's like pulling weeds. Right. And every one of those is an opportunity to fix it and make it better. And so that's what I would tell you.
What'd your dad do?
He owned one of the businesses that I own now, which is Elgin Diamond. Okay. So my dad is a founder of the family business, which was a molding business that made automotive parts.
Wow. Okay.
And so I came to work for him about 5 years after my career started, and we never looked back.
Now, that's funny. My dad sold steel parts for Steel Parts Corporation down in Tipton. He sold clutch plates all over the world. So he said, Glenn, a fraction of a tenth of a penny means an awful lot in my business.
We sell penny nickel dimes at Elgin Diamond.
Yeah, all day long. One thing we always love to tap into is we find sometimes the best attitude stories or the best influences of our guests not only come from mom and pop, but actually from the grandparents. I'm curious if you were able to have a relationship with one of the four or all four of your grandparents, and kind of like what was their story and what did you learn from them?
My grandparents, all immigrants, all moved here, different places. My Italian grandfather came here, one of 13 kids. Wow. And he basically held down 3 jobs. Wow. And they struggled financially, but they instilled the work ethic in their kids, and they yielded one entrepreneur and then one doctor, and it was all about hard work.
Sure.
I mean, that's the whole family's been about hard work. My dad carried it down. I've instilled about work ethic in my kids. I'm a big believer that you can just outwork people. You don't have to be the smartest.
Right.
And I'm seeing it now in my kids that are growing up that they're willing to put their head down and do the work. And that's, show me a kid with a passion to do the work and they're going to be fine in life.
What's your thought when you, I don't know how old your kids are, but do you, I coached football for 25 years. I love teenagers. I love the younger generation. I don't think they're all, pieces of shit like a lot of people do. But what, as you, and I'm sure you don't allow that in your life, but when you do look at the younger generation, what do you feel are their biggest attitude challenges that maybe they're facing that you didn't? Or, when you just kind of like analyze, because I got kids that are all in their 20s now, but just general thoughts on the younger generation and their attitude and what they face, maybe what you didn't have to.
So without getting myself in trouble, I mean, there's I've had younger people work for me that do a really good job, but then if you poke something negative at them, it's, how can you say something negative to me after I've done all this good stuff? And I think a little bit goes into everybody's a winner and the trophy mentality that we ultimately raised everybody. They say the kids are the problem. We raised them. So
right.
That's how they're raised. It's on us.
Right.
But I think it's a little bit of the driving ahead and the work ethic that we had when we were young. It's a little different.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it's wrong. Who knows? They may invent stuff and make things in the world a better place, but it's definitely different. I actually talked to a lot of the kids that work for me in their 20s about, going that extra hour of work and doing the extra things now while you can, because later on you're going to have kids and responsibilities out of here. That's what separates you from, your peers. And it always goes back. I'm a pretty simple guy. It always goes back to me to work and work ethic.
Sure.
So like you probably see on the football field, he's somebody that'll outwork another guy that's super talented. He ends up winning the job.
Yeah.
And so I mentor my kids in the same thing is, you got to be willing to put in the 2, 3, 4 extra hours and just win. And that's how you're going to do it.
That's attitude booster number 4. Do more than you're paid for. A concept that our soldiers understand for sure. I mean,
absolutely.
And our teachers understand and our first responders understand. But sometimes our lowest paid employees. How many people do you employ?
I employ 180 people at the 2 manufacturing businesses.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you probably kind of always knew you were going to have 180 employees. What's it like to employ 180 people? And I just think that, people don't, people are listening to this that are employees. There are probably people that are listening to this very definitely that employ 180. There's no doubt. Like, what's the whole, you probably don't think about it. I don't know, but what's it like to employ 180 and is turnover more so now than ever? And are you fighting this thing called, I can't find anybody to work?
I've had everything you could think of. It's hard as an employer because you care a lot about people. You want to care about people. And then when they don't give it back, you get frustrated and it becomes separation. But overall, we've been blessed with some really nice people that become family that work for us for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And so that there's good and bad. If you talk to most business owners, they'll tell you the most frustrating thing as a business owner is managing employees. Because sure. If you have 180, there's always 3 or 4 that are creating, stress for you.
Yeah.
And it's how do you, as a failure, as a leader, sometimes is the job's getting done, but you have a bad fit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to live with a bad fit because it seems hard to go find somebody new. And as I'm getting older, I'm learning that you should put the right people in the right spots and the right jobs. So as a young leader, I was all about accountability, big, really, really good process, hold people accountable. This is how you run a business. And then as I got older, I talked about empowerment. If you empower people to do the job, it frees you up. But the problem is if you hire people that don't care, you can't do that. And so my biggest thing now, and I'm sure it'll change, is hire people that are engaged.
Yeah.
If you hire people that care about your business like you care about it, you don't have to manage them.
Yeah.
And they manage themselves and they care more about the business as you do. And it's great. And so my role as a boss, I don't view myself as a boss. I view my job as to help them when they have problems, remove obstacles so they can do a good job.
I love it.
So our culture has been all about finding people that fit the Elgin Diamond Trident culture. And yeah, COVID was a mess. Finding people. We actually built a ventilator program that helped make parts for ventilator catheters. And I needed 90 people to run, and I went through 770 people in 6 months. Wow. Because of all the unemployment opportunities, and they can make more money going home. And today it's softening, but we still people jumping all over the place. And I don't know where everybody went.
Yeah.
I'd love somebody to educate me where all the people went.
Well, they probably just stopped working, is
maybe
what a lot of them did, and said, we're just going to pare down our lives. And, you know, they've become minimalists a lot of times.
Not all bad. I mean, there's the importance to have a happy life too.
Yeah. Well, and you know, then that begs the question, can I really be happy not reaching my full potential as a person? And that leads to depression and mental illness, and everybody wonders why we have a mental illness spike in our society, because nobody is, not nobody, but you know, there's a vast majority of people since this paradigm of the pandemic that our studies have shown us that this mental illness thing, it is really a result of lack of expectation of oneself, and there's nothing more damaging to the human psyche than looking in the mirror and knowing that you're not fulfilling your destiny and becoming the best person that you can become. So there's a lot of that going on, and then to try to get them out of that and back to work, certainly not easy. You really hit on it though earlier when you talked about, you know, creating a family in the business. We interviewed Mitzi Purdue from Purdue Farms, Purdue Chickens. They had thousands and thousands of employees, and she talked about how Mr. Purdue literally flew everybody to their farm and fed them a home cooked meal. I'm like, how many people? Like 2,000 people? She said they're family. So yeah, you think about that, you know, and you go, it's amazing. And then I had another guy we were talking to from Aon, and the new word, just so you know what's coming down the pike from your people, is harmony officers. They're chief harmony officers. So that's what it's about now. Not about engagement.
I need one of those.
It's all about harmony. Yeah. So that's what Aon and all the consultants of the world are selling, our harmony programs now, which is kind of fantastic. As a leader, number one, what's your best coping mechanism? Like, you know, certainly you've had to step back and go, okay, this is my show here. So how do you handle the stress and the challenge, and, you know, maybe the backstabbing or not being appreciated? What's your I don't know, like, what do you do when things go bad, or when you know that, you know, in times of great stress or great decision making? Like, what are you asking yourself? What are you telling yourself?
I'm fairly thick-skinned, so the attitude towards me doesn't bother me. The other thing I've learned over the years is when you have problems, you stress and you stare at the ceiling. And there's a part of owning a business or leading a business that a lot of employees don't see. Like, I joke about the chair I'm sitting in. When I was young, I would come home and my dad would be up at 4 a.m. having his coffee, and I'm always shook my head, why was he up? And I went to visit him. He's 84 now, and he sleeps till like 8, and I'm up at 4. And he looked at me and goes, well, it's the chair. And that chair keeps me up at night because you have all sorts of problems and stress and things you worry about. But as I've gotten older, I realize at the end of the day, the next day it's going to be okay. You'll work your way through it. Mm-hmm. So as I've gotten older, I've gotten more mature. I've gotten less of it's a catastrophe and the world's falling, and just another part of the thing, and you got to deal with it. So that helped me a lot, is just work through it and, you know, figure it out. In the end of the day, it'll work itself out.
I love it. One thing that we always like to do, I'm not sure if you've listened to any of our things, we do this thing called Knowledge Through the Decades, that we want to walk you through your life and ask you about the attitude lessons that you had as you were growing up and where you eventually end up now. So if you're willing to play, this isn't, there's no right, there's no wrong answers. It's just a happy, fun conversation just to get inside your head more and to help people, you know, understand who they are and how to help them bridge the gap from who they are to who they want to become, from where they are to where they want to go. There's several people, and we'll after we do that, you know, are young business owners. So I'm going to ask you this real quick. when you took the helm of this company, right? I'm guessing that this company has grown. Has it grown as much as you thought it has? And like, what are the one or two things that you think really, the principles, I guess, if you will, that really helped that growth, that helped you bridge the gap from where you were to where you wanted to go?
I came into a successful business, which is Elgin Die Mold, in the mid-90s. And in 2001, we decided to go from an old DOS computer system to a new paperless system. And ultimately, we had a large amount of turnover in '01 while we were going live. And so I had to work 80 to 100 hours a week because nothing worked and we didn't have enough people. And it was probably the worst year of my life. And I look back on that as probably one of the best things that ever happened to me because it allowed me to learn how the business ran. Coming into a successful business with good systems, it's hard to learn how everything works.
Yeah.
So that was one of the moments for me that made me really learn how to run a business. And then over the years, I've grown it really by adding Trident. I bought Trident in 2010. That was basically an insolvent business that I inherited and rolled into the business.
Cool.
But yeah, it's all been, again, I keep coming back to work, but that 2001 was a big moment for me. And I worked my way through it, and that gave me the tools to be who I am today.
And now what's scary is we have the cloud, DOS is antiquated, and AI's coming. Are you getting ready to do another 2003, you think?
I don't know. I am very interested in the digital technology, though, because like we're seeing it in the manufacturing world. I see a tremendous modification of using robotics and automation and AI teaching processes that don't work, self-correcting, and theoretically, if they do what it says it's going to do, you could have the perfect manufacturing system that makes 0 defects every day of the week through automation.
That would create a very profitable business.
It would.
Oh my gosh. Think about that.
It's scary to think, though, because it's scary to what's going to happen to all the labor that's used today.
Right.
And how are they going to get trained to handle the new technology? So it's a very interesting thing to watch and understand where the businesses are going. But theoretically, what we're talking about is the United States may be the lowest cost country in manufacturing in the next 5 years. And it's through all AI, automation, self-learning, IoT, all that stuff.
And yeah, I don't know if you watched the Elon Musk interview, but he said, ultimately the real issue with AI is it's going to become superior to human intellect, and then where the hell are we, right?
I had this conversation last night with my kids. Theoretically, could you lock in your house at 11 and turn your cars off? And it's scary stuff.
Yeah, they could lock you down. There's no doubt. Yeah. Well, let's talk about some fun stuff. Let's go knowledge through the decades. We always ask our people at our guests, every 10 years of their life what the attitude lesson is. We always start with childbirth. How many kids do you have?
I have 4.
Cool. So I have 4 too. So when you think about childbirth, either you being born or your kids being born, what do you think the attitude lesson is that you learned or that you felt through birth, through beginning this thing we call life?
I had a lot of fun as a kid. So my early decades were really focused on fun and sports, and I didn't even know what work was, and just enjoying life and doing what I was supposed to do, following rules and processes.
Well, so like specifically though about birth, when you saw those kids being born, was there an attitude lesson? Was there something in your head or in your mindset or in your thought process that when you became a father that either changed or that heightened?
Yeah, it's really the responsibility side of it really was what heightened me. It changed from being able to do what I wanted, whatever, and now these people were,
yours.
If I was an idiot, they're not going to turn out very well.
That's employee number 1 through 4 for you.
You got it. Absolutely. Yeah, and luckily my wife and I were both very aligned with, the values that we stand for.
Cool.
So it was good.
Cool. So I want you to think about being 10 years old, which puts you in, 4th or 5th grade. I'd love to know if you learned an attitude lesson when you were 10, whether it was from your parents, from a teacher, from a bully, from a principal, whatever it might have been. Do you remember being in 4th or 5th grade, a story that you said, there's something I probably should have learned?
As a kid, I had a principal tell me be cool, not cocky.
That's good.
me. I don't know why I remembered it, but I did, and I actually say it to my kids today.
I love it. I always, that's very similar to something I say from the stage all the time is, do you know the difference between confidence and arrogance?
Mm-hmm.
And that's called likability.
Yeah.
And how likable are you? I mean, that's kind of the same concept. So yeah, I like it. Be confident, not cocky.
Be cool, not cocky.
Be cool, not cocky. I like it. Okay. So 20, you go, I'm guessing you went to college. I'd love to know where you were at, where you went to college.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
Oh, that's right. You told me that. Right. So if you remember turning 20 or maybe 21, the inevitable age, was there an attitude lesson when you were at Kansas, when you turned 21, that you got, okay, there's an attitude lesson for me?
Attitude lesson is really when I was graduating.
Okay.
I looked at my college roommate. I'm like, oh my gosh, we could have probably worked a little harder. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, we could have had more fun. We couldn't have had more fun. So that was kind of the aha moment where I started saying, okay, I need to get a little focused here and work.
Interesting. Okay. Very good. So now you hit 30, right? Tell me what was going on in your life when you turned 30 and what was your attitude lesson there?
First kid, right around there was my first kid, and I was working, and yeah, that's where my life kind of changed to being a parent and a dad. And I took over the family business at 32, so all of it was kind of happening at the same time.
Major shift, lots of responsibility. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, work-life balance became a thing.
Did you ever work anywhere else besides this company?
Yeah, I worked for Cooper Industries for 5 years. So I worked in their lighting group. I lived in Mississippi, Georgia, and then Chicago, and actually I didn't fit in corporate America because I kind of say what I think.
Uh-huh.
And they offered me an opportunity to start a business in Miami. And so I told my dad I was moving to Miami to start a business, and he didn't want me to move. So he talked me into coming to work for him.
Okay. What was the worst job you ever had? I'm guessing not that I know you real well, but my guess is you probably worked at 15, 16, 13.
I did. I used to detail cars.
Oh, not fun?
Yeah. No, I started a flyer, and I went to the golf clubs and told people while they played golf, I would detail their cars. So guys would drop their car off, and I would detail and pick them up at the end of the round.
Now, did you have all the machines to detail car, or was it a hand detail?
A hand detail.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the worst job, and I did it while I worked here, is when we have a reject. My dad used to send me to go sort parts.
Oh.
They sit there for hours looking at thousands of parts and trying to filter them and throw the right one in the box that was a good part or bad part.
Do you have contacts, or your eyes completely fried at this point now?
Yeah, they are now, but as a kid, they were good. So
I like it. Well, hey, let's go to age 40. Tell me what you were doing. What happened at 40 in your life that might have said, hey, there's an attitude lesson?
2010 is when I bought Trident, so it's 41.
Wow.
So yeah, now I got 4 kids. Now I got 2 businesses, and that's when chaos started. So it started getting really busy and balancing, being present for my kids' lives and kids' sports and all that stuff, while the responsibilities of starting this one business that I bought and running the day-to-day business.
Yeah, mergers and acquisitions aren't necessarily all they're cracked up to be. Do you live by a mantra? Again, we got a lot of people that listen to this. Certainly, you're not the only 40-year-old that's like, I got 2 businesses, 4 kids, and everybody's in the sport, right? Like, what was your litmus test, or what was your guide to kind of balance that?
I don't know. I always joked that I was too dumb to know I shouldn't be doing all this.
Right.
And now, I got all this going on, and I kind of laugh. Like, I don't know how I did all this, and now I'm balancing it.
Yeah.
But again, it just goes back to common sense and work and carving out and understanding what's important. I'm in a business group that one of the things we do often is we kind of try to align our values with what we do every day.
Cool.
And that's one of the things you write down. Here's all the things that are important to me. And then you look at it and look at what did I do today?
Yeah.
And if it's totally opposite, like a lot of people say, oh, these are my 10 things that are really important to me. And then they go through their day or their week and they didn't do anything that was important to them. They just did other stuff. And so I try to do that quite a bit, is to stay balanced with how do I carve out time to be home? How do I carve out time for me?
Cool.
Health, fitness. Fitness is probably the biggest thing that suffers, squeezing that in.
Amen, brother. I know. I love your practical. Yeah. I mean, Well, we'll get to that, but especially because I'm guessing you're 50.
53.
Hey, all right, we're about the same age, so this will be your last one. But I loved your practical answer that, you know what, being there for your kids and balancing time doesn't have to be a calculus formula. Gappers, as you're listening to this, and I'm sure you caught it, but you know, stop the interview right now and write down, what are my 10 values? What are the 10 things that I value most in my life? And then go look at your Outlook calendar or whatever calendar you're operating on and go, is this congruent with what's going on? I mean, that's freaking, you know, that's not hard and that's really good. So thanks for that. So, all right, you had 3 years ago, you had your 50th birthday. You are where you are. You're CEO of Volition. You got your 2 companies. What's the attitude lesson of turning 50?
I am now trying to figure out how to enjoy what I've done.
Yeah.
So I'm all in on work, but I'm trying to now get more balance the other way, which is have more free time to play a little bit. So I'm really working on building the businesses where they run without me on a daily basis, free me up to play with Volition, build Volition more. But yeah, that's kind of my focus now over the next 5 years. I'd like to kind of be chairman of both companies and not in the day-to-day grind of it.
Yeah, that's an admirable goal and one that I think many people share, including the host of the Get Attitude podcast. So
you need to give your old roommate a call, right? The one you had too much fun with?
Yeah. Still talk to him.
Right. He can take it over. He can retire at 70 and you can be done at 60.
Absolutely.
Well, John, you've been a delight, man. I mean, you've dropped a lot of bombs, a lot of great advice. I think there's going to be so many people that are going to listen to this and check the boxes and go, number one, we want to help Volition of America. Number two, it's the Folds of
Honor.
Folds of Honor. That freaking logo, now that I see it and I understand it, is super, super powerful to me. And I think our entrepreneurs and business owners and even our employees are going to gain from the time that we spent with you today. We always just love to give you, one last thought to that person that's walking on the beach, that's driving in the car, that's sitting there going, I don't know how I'm going to get through this life. I don't know how I'm going to build this business. I don't know how I'm going to bridge the gap from who I am to who I want to become. Now's just your time. If you could just talk to them on a one-on-one basis, because this is why a lot of people come to this podcast. What is your message of hope for them? And just, what's your overall message that if you just were sitting down talking to them to give them advice about keeping on, we'd just love to hear that.
Yeah, we have a video on our website on the About page, which is Volition, and it ultimately is telling you and empowering you what the power of volition is. And if you ask Colonel Rooney, it's the most powerful word in the English dictionary. It's the power choice. So your life and your legacy will be written by those choices, and that's what the whole essence of Volition is. And that actually is one of the first things I did when we made this video. Is I played it for my kids.
Awesome.
And I think that just making good choices and living a better life will lead you there. And obviously I talked a lot about work ethic, and you can get there, and you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just got to be willing to go try and have the right attitude. But I'll tell you one funny story, and then I'll sign off with you guys. Every parent's dream, nightmare actually, I went in their room and my son had a tattoo card sitting on his desk, and I'm like, what the heck? And my one son, Ryan, looked at me and goes, it wasn't me, it was Connor. So I sold his brother out in like 10 seconds, which I thought was really funny. He goes, but you're not going to be mad, Dad. I'm like, yeah, I am going to be mad. And I talked to Connor, and he took the Volition logo and put it on his chest because it means so much to him.
Wow.
So I didn't love that he got a big tattoo on his chest, but I really loved that the message of Volition and the meaning behind it empowered him to want to have it a reminder on his body every single day. And that's what the idea of this brand is. And so it's really super cool. And I love being on your show today. Thank you for having me. And hopefully everybody out there will check us out. If you want to make a donation to Folds of Honor, you can do it through our website. So there's a way of giving. And we see that a lot where people sometimes just log in and they buy something and then they support our mission by donating on top of it. But yes, right there you can see the choices, or just give whatever you want. But yeah, Folds of Honor is a great organization, and we're proud to be, partner with them.
I love it. The Italian stallion, John Sapiente, came and he talked to us about the power of choice. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, you always have two ways to view anything, and that's either positive or negative. That's what attitude's all about. That's why we had John on the show. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of the Get Attitude Podcast. Thanks, John.